Hey guys, it's Amanda, and I have with me today a close friend of mine. Her name is Rachel Rhodes, and she is going to just talk a little bit about how she has learned to kind of balance her life with all of the things, and instead of juggling and feeling stressed out. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Such an honor
Yes.
that I was invited to do this. So I'm Rachel Rhodes. I have 4 daughters. My oldest is in heaven. She passed away in 2011. Then I have London, who's 5, Sydney, who's 3, and Kai, who's 2. I'm surprised I remember all of their ages.
Yeah. Okay, and what do you do for a living?
So I have my own, or I guess my family, we have our own business, our home-based business with essential oils, Young Living Essential Oils. We do that full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband's actually home with me, which is fun and interesting all at the same time.
Yeah.
We will get into that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So being an entrepreneur, someone who's kind of doing this at home, you have children, you have a relationship with your husband, you have a job. So how have you learned to kind of balance, so to speak, all of that? And I use that word, and even as I was using it, I know, because it really isn't. But why don't you just talk about that?
So I think it's interesting when you have an assortment of moving parts within your family. Everyone's family is different. Whether there's 2 people working, 1 person working, even, when you stay at home, that is the most amazing occupation and job that I think that God could ever give somebody, because you are raising tiny humans, and I feel like just the patience required for that in itself is monumental.
Right.
So with our family, we are at different schools. I have, my organization's fairly large, so that requirements of leadership also in leading a team is there, and then honoring my husband and his calling with things that he wants to do. There's all these like pulls and tugs.
Yeah.
And so initially I jumped into it and I was like, we got this.
Yeah.
I'm a very free-spirited person. I don't know if any of you have ever taken the Enneagram. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so I'm spontaneous, I'm fun.
And I'm a 1.
And you know what? We are such good friends, and we,
I know.
I think, balance each other out well. And you guys look up a 1 because they're amazing. They keep the 7s straight.
That's right.
But for a long time, I very much felt like I had to be organized and have a checked off list and have grids and Excel spreadsheets. And my husband's also one. And but I was very much like a goldfish climbing a tree. Like I just needed to learn how to operate and swim in my bowl to the best of my abilities. And so how to work with that flow of the gifts that God gave me. And I heard a concept that has literally set me free, and I hope it sets you free, that I operate under as far as balance. Like that word to me is almost, I don't want to say a 4-letter word,
Right,
but honestly, like think about, and my friends that know me know that, they've heard me say this like 500 million times. I told Amanda, I was like, are you sure you want me to talk about this? I talk about this all the time, and I don't want people to get sick of it, but balance, think about the last time in your life every plate has been spinning perfectly. Like, when has that ever happened in your life? Right. And when it has happened, maybe for the 2 seconds it has happened, how hard was it to keep all those plates spinning? And how long did it last? So why are we all kind of striving for that? I know that there's like a peace of mind there in that thought process. I know that we view others and think that they're balanced, that whole comparison thing. But I heard this concept called harmony. And so instead of striving for balance, you strive for harmony. And harmony is knowing when to dial things up and dial other things down. I'm very visual, so thinking of I think it's called, what is the?
I think it's a soundboard.
A sound. I'm like, I call it a switchboard. Everyone's like, no, that's
it's a soundboard.
No, I think it's a soundboard. The producers, when you see a producer with all his toggles, sometimes the bass has to be up and the treble dialed down. Sometimes he he's constantly moving these toggles up and down. And so in my family, as long as our communication is crisp, like with my husband, that's kind of like the foundation, like just really working on our communication. I will tell him, hey, today I really have to dial my business up, maybe for the next 2 days. And so I will work a lot on work and business, and then I will dial my family up, and then I'll dial my business down. And so just knowing that toggle from day to day and having that open communication has really set me free, because I didn't feel like all the plates had to be spinning.
Yeah, that's good.
If that's helpful.
No, it is so helpful. And I love that visual, just because I feel like I tend to be a little bit of a visual person too. And it really does make sense that you're not going to have everything balanced. The kids and the work and the extracurricular activities, hanging with your friends. And then if you strive for it, I feel like that's what makes it more difficult,
Yes,
so,
for sure.
So in that, there's boundaries that you have to put in place. So what do kind of some of the boundaries look like?
Well, so I have one of the things that I have a very clear set of priorities, and that is always God, my husband, my family, and my business, like that order. And so I use that as a baseline.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I always continuously check in with my husband. I try to. I'm not perfect. There are times, and we'll talk about this in a second, where I get so on a roll with something that I'm not acknowledging that things are happening, and that my kids are being really whiny, and that my husband might be a little whiny. So paying attention to that. But honestly, I think for me, having to set boundaries on social media, I've had to actually, like, that concept of designing your life. I'm not a super hyper scheduled person, but if you give me boundaries, as long as I can have freedom within those boundaries, I've learned, especially with the business I'm in, every time someone needs me, I can't jump to that every single time. Every single time a friend, there very much has to be, I have to run it through that filter. But I do create time for that. I create time and carve time for friends. I create and carve time for date night. And so I think that if you're in a season where there's a lot of something that you're having to pay attention to, if you're remodeling your house, or you're having to pour all of yourself into something, you have to be very careful in carving that time and scheduling that time with your husband and with your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even with Brian and I, with the time, even with doing Kindred Women, there are times where the kids and him are out playing, and I have someone coming over, to talk with them and to interview them. And there's just pieces where we have to communicate that so that he knows. And the same with Nick, like, you have to tell him, hey, I'm doing this tonight, so that he's not blindsided at 4:00 when now you're having to leave. Like, you have to set up the communication, you have to have the boundaries. So I really like that. And then I know with prioritizing time, so is that kind of the same for you as being intentional with your time?
Yes. And it's so funny, because this whole conversation to me, I'm like, oh, this is like, I am the most non-structured person ever. But I've learned the hard way of letting life take me where it wants me to, letting the day take me where it wants me to, basing everything on how I feel at that moment. And if you do that, I mean, think about it. How much have you accomplished that way?
Right.
You're not always going to feel like doing certain things. And so being intentional, and I've realized too, when I put something on the calendar, that calendar is holding me accountable. So if I can put things on the calendar, schedule things in, and guys, I'm going to be so transparent, because this is Kindred Women here, and I'm just opening up about this. Like, for my mindset and my, like, mental space, I schedule in that time with my husband even at night. Like, if you know what I mean. Like, I know that seems super boxed in, but it's not. It's actually freed me up to have that mental space of, okay, I need to dial down all the thoughts of the things that I need to do, and I really just need to step into this time with my husband, like freed from all of that and just really make it about him. So yes, being intentional has been huge for me, so that the day doesn't get away from me.
Yeah, I mean, and it can. I know social media used to be something for me that was such a pull, where now if I need to put a post up for Kindred Women, I will put that post up, and then I start to kind of scroll, and then I'm like, oh, I wasn't doing that. Like, I was doing this, you know? And so then and it doesn't happen all the time, you know? I mean, there are times where I do get scrolling and things, but that was for me one of the most difficult things. And it's not like I've stopped being on social media, because I am, but I've just learned either when is the best time, you know? Do I do it when Wyatt is playing, or, you know, when they're having kind of a quiet time? Like, you have to be intentional. And specifically with the social media, like, I don't want to be on there all the time, you know? So.
And I think, well, I also think, I'll just say this, like, I love social media. That's how I grow my business. That's how I connect with people. That's how I keep up with people. But it's like that intentionality of, I let myself scroll, but I say, okay, the next 15 minutes you can scroll. You can encourage your friends and comment and love their pictures of their children, and or I'll set aside 15, 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to answer all emails and all messages and just be hyper focused there.
Yeah, I love that. So I feel like, you know, just using that word balance, I think even just in this, in this conversation though, I think that's something that people need to stop chasing. And wouldn't you agree that, you know, I think it's easy for us to think, like you said, they look like they have everything going. They look like they have all their plates spinning, and they're wearing all their hats, and they're doing everything. But I also feel like that's an internal thing, where you need to look at what you're doing, what you're meant to be doing, instead of trying to keep everything balanced. And I feel like when you do the harmony concept, that's when you're going to feel, so to speak, balanced, you know. And then we could probably go into her and I, we talk a lot about mental health, you know, when in some of our conversations. I was a psychology major, so mentality, just that is a huge thing for me. And so when you're feeling harmonized, what does that mental state look like? And what did the mental state look like before that? Or even when you're not feeling kind of in sync?
Well, so I think the concept of being balanced comes a lot from comparison, because you view others as being balanced, and they might, whatever they're doing that day, that just might be their highest priority. You don't see their house that day. You don't see their family that day in that post or whatnot. And also understanding that comparison, you cannot compare your calling to someone else's. And that's the biggest thief of not only joy, but purpose. Like, I am so happy that my friends are doing this and this, but like, that is not the calling that I have. And so just focusing more on what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be, and more about who I am and who I am in Christ, and less about what everyone else is doing and achieving balance. It was just that was the first thing of my mental, like clearing all that comparison stuff out. Because I grew up very much comparing myself. And I, you know, had a great upbringing, but we didn't have much money. And so I just viewed people with money as better than me. So I kind of started up with that mindset. And so there's a lot of comparing. And so when I learned to strip that back and really just be focused on what I was called to do, and then to understand that harmonizing concept of knowing what to dial up and what to dial down, and it's okay, because everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And you have to be okay with saying no to some things. That's what that harmony looks like to me. It's when I'm focused on what I'm supposed to be doing, what God's called me to do, and then being okay with what I've prioritized for the day.
Yeah, that's good.
Did I answer that?
No, I think you did. And in even more kind of in depth, when it's not harmonized, what does what does that kind of look like? I mean, I know what it looks like in my house.
And look, guys, this is a daily struggle. It is not like we are always living 100% in harmony.
Yeah.
That's my husband. I mean, I think, what does it look like? It's kids freaking out. It's noticing that, like, I see it a lot in my kids. I see it in my husband. Maybe there's a little bit of isolation on his part, and then I get a little resentful. My house falls to...
Yeah. It's like, where's the laundry? Where's the couch? Because the laundry's on the couch.
And for me, like, I've had to honestly evaluate that part of it and what that looks like for me. It was just keeping up with the house became such a, like, it bogged me down. Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, this is the day for house. Yeah. We will keep things where they kind of need to be until this day. Yeah. That's been helpful for me. Now, that's not for everyone. I mean, I know that God is a God of order, and a lot of people like order. But I can actually go to sleep with dishes in the sink.
Me too, girl. I've changed. Yeah, I have changed. Yeah, I think that's one thing that with my personality, I think a lot of people think organization, but really I have a strong administration. So the organized, I mean, there's, like you said, there's an order to things, and I will, I mean, you look at my kids' rooms right now, and they are completely trashed. The kitchen, it's okay. But there are certain rooms, and this is kind of like sidebar.
No, but this is good.
Seriously, like, there are certain rooms that I want to look good, and I want to look nice because I want to feel good.
Yes.
And so the easiest places for me, my kids' rooms, they are usually a mess, and I don't like that, but it's kind of one of those things.
Choose your battles.
Right. Yeah. But the kitchen, I'm in the kitchen a lot. Yeah. I mean, I am in there a lot. Yeah. So I would love for it to be super clean, but we have mail, we have oils, we have dishes, all that stuff. And so, but at the end of the night, I don't have the energy. I don't want to do it. And so then in my living room, I sit down, and it's nice and it's comfortable and it looks good and it smells good. Because this is somewhere at nighttime with Brian and I, when we try to be intentional, we sit down and we will watch a movie or we'll talk or something. And I don't want to feel like that in the space that we're in. So it's funny because, a lot of people will think, oh, I bet your house looks amazing. And there are some places that do, But I also learned, just specifically with the house thing, not to try to do it all in one day. And maybe it does work for you.
Like, I don't do the whole thing. Yeah.
And so, like, bathrooms, I do on Monday. I don't really dust, but I'm supposed to. Like,
when somebody comes over, you're like,
no. Even then, I don't anymore. I used to.
You're like, just don't go in that room
I used
or that
to.
one.
But like the floors, there's certain days for certain things, and I think that's where the freedom comes.
There is freedom in
just
that.
Being able to kind of get certain things in order, and that they don't always have to be. And if people come over, like a group of people, I'm not gonna like clean my home if I have friends coming over. But if I have like a party or something, yeah. And even then, sometimes like, you know what? I'm not cleaning the floor because it's just gonna get food on it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna clean it up.
But I'll tell you, one of my best. She's probably watching this. But I went to a birthday party with my kids, and at the time I was nursing my daughter, and her house was beautiful downstairs, and I was like, I need to nurse my daughter, but we need to be in a quiet space because she
gets distracted.
Yeah. And she's like, girl, you can go in my room, but it's a mess. And I was like, oh, please let me go there. And I remember walking into her room, and I chose to sit down in her dirty laundry, and I just sat there with my daughter, and I was like, this is the best.
Yes.
Because it felt like, I honestly feel so connected to people in that.
Right, yeah.
And so I loved hearing, like, there's spaces where you want to feel good. Because, I mean, just because I tolerate it doesn't mean I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's, like you said, there's some things that you prioritize. Your mental health and your marriage.
Right. And I think one thing I've also learned is to get rid of this stuff. I mean, I know, like, this wasn't but, we just rolling with it. Like,
What's her name?
Marie Kondo.
Marie Kondo.
I couldn't get into that, but The Simplified Life with Emily Lay, she really kind of helped me with that, because I was buying all this stuff, but then I would have to put the stuff back. And so then nothing was ever in its place. But if you have less stuff, then you don't have as much to get rid of or to move back into its place.
Yeah.
So like books, I love books, but they're all over the place because I'm like reading one here and then I'll put that one down, and so less stuff and cleaning certain rooms just to make you feel kind of mentally there. And I know for myself, when I'm not in harmony with my husband and my kids, I feel like I start to get, I think stressed out can kind of be an overused word, but I start to get barky and like, my daughter will laugh. She's like, "You're not a dog," but no, I start to kind of get really irritable and annoyed about everything, and then I realize, like, what is my problem? Like, what is happening? So does that kind of happen with you guys? Like,
I yes. And I think one of the things my husband helped me to see is he's like, "Rachel, you are loving and compassionate and you like to be with people," and he's like, "and then sometimes you come home and you just have nothing left," and he's like, "but we're second on that priority chain, and your actions aren't matching that." And he does it in a more loving way, unless it's been a while since I've paid them any attention. But so that I've had to really intentionally, and it sounds bad, but I think we subconsciously sometimes do that. We put on our best for other people, and so now I'm super intentional about that, and he has to course correct me a lot because I get very passionate about what I do. But my wise friend Ashley Diet shared this concept with me, which was also freeing. And she talked about how we are all Legos. Okay? And she's like, "Rachel, you are a Lego with 6 connections. Like, that's all you have."
Yep.
So those 6 connections, and she talked about how in life we're meant to help connect other people. Maybe it's connecting other people to a resource, or connecting other people to a group or to a friend. She's like, but you can only handle that many, but so many connections. And so I was like, that is so true. So if you're trying to plug into different things and different people, and you're just, you don't have that many connections to give. And so it's like prioritizing that. And knowing where else you can connect people so that they are feeling filled up once they leave you. So you're not,
that's good.
Like, I know we all want to be someone's person, but again, you do kind of have to prioritize that too.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we've talked before about like different seasons in life. So would you say that the priorities are the same in every season? I think I already know your answer, but like, would your priorities have been the same? Will they be the same in 5 years, or were they the same 5 years ago? Your priorities, have they changed, shifted?
No, I mean, it sounds good. I've always wanted them to be God, husband, family. Have I always intentionally treated it that way? No. But as I'm learning and growing, and as I have people in my life that like bump me back into my lane and hold me accountable, and they will stay that way, because that to me is the most important thing. And I just think it takes reminding, unfortunately. Like, I have to be reminded every day, even when her and I have coffee together. Like, sometimes she'll say some things and I'm like, about that. I needed to hear that. Even like the one thing Amanda does really well is talk about like her time with God in the morning, or whenever you do it. And I'm like, just having that rub of somebody that I know is consistently doing that challenges me to do that as well. And so,
I love that you said the accountability, because truly I think that you do have to be reminded sometimes about what you're going to be intentional with and what you're going to prioritize. And yes, our main focus is God, and then our husband, our family, and then whatever else is under that. like you said, I love though that you and your husband are able to tell each other when you don't feel like, I mean, it stinks, but you have to, like, because I'm trying to think, did Brian and I like really do that? I mean, I know we were walking down the street with the kids the other day, and I was just kind of a little, stressed, whatever, and he was like, "What's up, babe?" And I was just like, "Nothing." And I think that probably could have been a moment where I could have said something about what was going on. And so I think that that's a good challenge even for me to just say, okay, if you feel like something is not in harmony, where can you talk to your spouse or a friend or, a mentor or someone that can help you to kind of get back to that? So.
And I think having people around you that know you and know the places you go when you're stressed and can recognize that about you. I mean, that's another reason why I love the Enneagram, because I drift towards certain tendencies when I'm stressed.
Right,
and
right.
So, and Nick and I have had to be intentional with check-ins. If we go too long without a check-in, then there's like isolation and there can be some resentment. And then I love Brene Brown's talk about the story you start to tell yourself in your head. Everybody has a story that they craft and create about a concept, and they'll run with it. And like Nick's story about the same thing that I'm thinking about might be completely different than mine, and so you have to be intentional with checking in. And one of the things that I'll say to him is, "What's the story in your head about this thing?" Because I want to hear his version of his story. And then also, I'll say it real quick. What's helped us with prioritizing, and I feel like schedules are a lot of conflict in like families. I had a planner. We have a wall calendar, but we use the Google Calendar. And they're synced. They're synced. Yes. So Nick will put something in the calendar, and we both look at it every day. And I'm like, oh, he put that in the calendar. He might text me, hey, can I put this in the calendar? Or he'll text me afterwards. But we can both open it up and see where we have stuff. That's honestly saved us from a lot of
yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Heated fellowship.
Heated fellowship. Yeah. Okay, so before we close, I know your husband stays home, so he was able to kind of, leave his job, and you guys are doing the oil business together. So, briefly, do you want to share just kind of what that looks like as far as, because I mean, even my sister-in-law and my brother, he's home now, and he used to be in the Coast Guard. So they're even kind of in some of the same situation. And I know there's other people where, how do you do that? How does that work?
That was exciting. So blessed to be able to do that. But it was also a transition. I mean, he had a pretty successful position when he was in the workforce, and it required a lot of administrative things, and that's one area he's gifted in. He's gifted in organization and administration and getting the ball rolling on things. Granted, it wasn't where he was called, but he was very useful there. And so then he went from that to literally being at home and folding baskets of laundry. So that was hard. And we recently had to, and we thought that he was going to be kind of partner with me in what I do, but honestly, guys, that's not his calling. We realized that. And so I'm excited to help him. So it quickly shifted to, okay, what are you called to do in this season of your life? Is it to really step up in this stay-at-home dad role? But there was an emptiness in him where he felt like there was something bigger. And so I think
I can relate.
And honestly, if you stay home, you will either feel like this fills me up and this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, or you might even feel like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be, but there's another branch or something else that I feel like God is calling me to that I need to step into as well, because that's what you've done. And so he's in that process now, and it caused us to really, I was like, we're going to focus on it, we're going to pray about it, we're going to completely step into it, and we're going to press into it. And it was hard, and we didn't know what it looked like, but literally within the past 2 weeks, he's just started this wood shop in our garage, and he's just like, it's amazing. And so now our schedule's changed. It's making time for that for him, making time for my stuff, and then how we can parent together and food shop and do all that stuff.
I mean, I know when Brian is home for like one day, we almost forgot to pick up Ava from school. Like, it's just funny how that when that dynamic changes, you are used to doing it one way, but then now you have another person to help. But if you don't talk and figure out the roles and all of that type of stuff, then you gonna forget the little girl up at the school. I mean, I'm not joking. It was 1:38. She's supposed to be picked up at 1:30, and I was like, babe, what's happening? You know, because I was thinking, oh, I'm relieved because now he's here. And that may or may not have been kind of what it was like for you guys, but I can imagine just, it's wonderful having them home. Like, I love when Brian is home. And I tell him that all the time. When he's on vacation, we're just like, yes, honey, come, you know. But now, like, but we do have a system and kind of a thing that you do together. So, I guess the last thing, what is one thing that you would say that you would want the viewers to kind of get out of this? I mean, I know they're going to get lots. You know,
one thing is to not be so hard or heck bent on yourself and your schedule for organization to the point where you're pressing yourself outside of God, where God wants you to be. You are not meant to have thoughts of torment over your life that are pulling you out of your zone because you feel like you're not a certain way or you're not getting things done a certain way, or just have freedom in knowing that, yes, while there's a million things, you might have a lot of kids, you might have one kid and then have a lot of activities. Sit down and think about what you can dial up from one day to the next. So that's the extent that I organize. I say, these 3 days, I'm dialing these 2 things up. These 3 days, I'm gonna dial those things down and dial these 3 things up. And then I have freedom within that day to operate in those priorities. And if you can start doing that, and guys, my house is kind of messy, but you know what? My kids run around and they have a great time and our doors are open. And so to every yes and no and to every set of boundaries, just know that as long as you're in your lane and you are where you're supposed to be and you are walking in that calling God gives you, He's going to qualify you and He's going to give you wisdom with boundaries. He's going to bring people in your life that might rub you, but they're going to actually allow you to level up. And so I think that whole concept of harmony was freeing for me, and then just checking in with your spouse continuously. You're not going to just have an amazing marriage. You're not going to just have amazing communication. There's so much intentionality behind it, and it's not like where you set it and forget it. Like, it's a constant like check in continuously.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you. Yes. That's wonderful. Yeah, this was good. So we will see you next time, and we hope that you enjoyed this.